Good to have you back, and you're still watching The Point, where we analyze economic policies, and here on Smart24 TV, where we drive your business. Furthermore, you'll get to realize that the discussions we normally have here are regarding the economic kind of setting, how they affect you, a business person, and how you can fit in as well. Now, our kind of discussion today, like I did mention earlier, is basing and being driven around the analysis on the import, on the car import business, I should say, because this is a business. When you go around, for those who use the Ginja Road, once you reach Nakawa and beyond Nakawa, as you're stretching to Banda, there are quite a number of car bonds in the country, but most of them are centered there. There are others that actually stretch over in the capital, but most of them are there. We have vehicles that actually parking on the sideways and all of that. Quite a number of brokers as well, or what you could call middlemen. Most of them drive these vehicles just to look out for a possible buyer. Well, you can be one of those, but before you buy or before you go out there to a bond, you need to understand these things, because at times they give you a rate card depending on the taxes that are being imposed onto them. That is according to what they say or what is being revealed by some of the car dealers. Well, besides that, our conversation here is a continuation on what Anthony Sebale had on the show with a car importer in the country who has been in here in this kind of business for a decade and so. But besides that, now there was a ban which the Uganda Revenue Authority is set to implement, or which the Uganda Revenue Authority is implementing. And I'm still with Emmanuel, who is coming in from the Document Processing Center in charge of vehicles, of motor vehicles at the Uganda Revenue Authority. He's the supervisor customs in that department. Well, Emmanuel, when we look at this issue to do with the ban on importation of vehicles that date 15 years of their manufacturing date, this is an initiative that was pushed by government for matters that also include environmental protection and everything. How is the implementation so far? How is the Uganda Revenue Authority trying to implement this? Haven't you found any kind of wrangles between you and the importers? Because I do believe they will still import these vehicles.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's true, we have some bit of challenge where some people, I think maybe because of lack of information, are still importing these prohibited vehicles. Those are vehicles that have made 15 years old or more from the year of manufacture. How are we getting them, these vehicles? We have our officers at Mombasa.
Yes.
We have customs staff that are of URA that are deployed at the port, Mombasa or Dar es Salaam, and they verify these vehicles that are coming in, these vehicles that are coming in physically, and check, confirm the year of manufacture. So those that are not allowed in, they are held at the port because these ones are contraband. They are held at the port. So now it's the importer to look for a buyer elsewhere, not in Uganda, and have these vehicles re-exported. So we have people after getting the vehicle not cleared out of customs, they look for market elsewhere where these vehicles have markets, say in DRC or in South Sudan. So they get buyers and they get these vehicles cleared out of the port on transit to those destinations. Those destinations here. So that is how we are implementing. So we cannot allow in those vehicles that have made 15 years. 15 years, because that's the ceiling age. 15 years. So because of our staff at the port of entry, they check or they examine these vehicles to confirm the year of manufacture.
Well, I also heard of something, I'll stand to be corrected if I'm wrong, that once vehicles come into the country, they are given 6 months of tax-free?
The 6 months, I mentioned this earlier, that is the other category of regime I mentioned, warehousing regime, where these goods move on transit from the port to inland.
Okay.
And then they enter into warehousing regime.
Okay.
Then on warehousing, they are given a maximum of 6 months.
Okay.
Of 6 months to have cleared them out of customs. Either you pay the duty, or if you have got buyers, if you are a car dealer, because they have clients also elsewhere, they export them. So that's the 6 months period given to these vehicles when they're within the bond.
What happens when it expires?
When it expires, they're supposed to be auctioned by Uganda Revenue Authority. They go through public auction. This one go through a process where they will run a public advert for those vehicles that are due for auction.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Now, besides that, let's look at the issue to do with concerns raised about transparency and efficiency of car import processing in the country. What measures is the Uganda Revenue Authority, taking to address some of these concerns in regards to transparency and efficiency? I want to believe, as the revenue collectors, you've always pushed for transparency in the issue of raising the tax base and raising these revenues. But when you look at this, the concerns of the transparency and efficiency this time around in the car import business, how are you trying to address this? And are they false information? And of course, they can be false, but how does the Revenue Authority, or how does, for example, you as a supervisor of customs, how do you people carry on the transparency within your unit?
Okay, thank you so much, moderator. Declarations of imported vehicles to the country are done by customs agents, who are appointed by the importers. So if you import a car, or if you're a car dealer, you appoint a customs agent to manage the declaration process. And this is an online appointment. It's done online. The declaration of these vehicles is also done on online platform. We have a system called a Skoda World system, where the declarations are made. And then after the declarations are made, assessments are generated, and you get assessment notes as the client on your email. Because when you get a tax identification number, you have an address, and one of the contacts is the email address. So when you get the assessments are shared to your email, so that you go and pay for the duty, you as the importer, not using another person to pay for you. So we have the system that is in place. Declarations made on your behalf, because these customs agents are licensed under the law to manage the import processes or export processes under customs. And then the assessment generated, you go and pay. You go and pay. After payment, the staff under the Document Processing Center will vet the declaration. They will look at what you have declared against the findings. So if you have declared, for example, Toyota Harrier of this year of manufacture, they will look at the document presented accompanying this declaration, document like bill of lading, bill of lading, the export certificate, among others. And then the verification done at Mombasa, and look at what you have declared, are they tallying with what has been found. So that is what is done under the Document Processing Center. Yes, before the vehicle is released to you. When they are satisfied, then the release will be made, and then you are able to have the generation of the logbooks done.
And of course, when you look at the issue to this, is that some civil society players believe that at times it's better to use the value of used cars in determining the taxes. Do you use that as well? For example, the value, because most of the vehicles that we import here are either second-hand or third-hand. Now, some of the brokers or car dealers believe it would be better if you would tax less of such vehicles, because at times their longevity may not be as much because they are already used.
Yes, it's true. We have a harmonized database for these used vehicles. For used vehicles, so that when you import a a particular car, another person for the same make, model, the same parameter on that vehicle, you pay the same. You are paying the same amount. So we have that database harmonized for used vehicles that are imported to the country, so that there is that fairness that you pay the same amount of duty within that particular period of time. If it is this month of April, if you import that particular car, you pay the same amount. That is the database. It's a guide. It's actually a guide for used motor vehicles, and it's what the dealers and any other person who imports vehicles will also use to declare their vehicles to customs.
Okay. Yes, all right. Now, when you look at some of, where do you think the challenges in regards to taxation? Well, like I've been mentioning here in our conversation, that some of these some of the bond owners say the reason as to why the vehicles are more expensive in here, even when they are imported at a lower cost or bought at a lower cost while importing, is that the taxes are high. I need to know, are these taxes high, or let's say, okay, are they relatively, some of them actually say are double the amount of money being bought or they used to buy these vehicles?
I would not say they're higher than the amount or not, but it will depend on which vehicle one has imported. Because if you import a car that is already 9 years old, for carrying persons, you remember the rates I mentioned, the import duty, the VAT, withholding tax, environmental levy. So you find that the compounded rate, the percent of the value that goes to tax will be high. But for someone who can afford and import a vehicle that is below 9 years, that is 8 years, you are going to pay at a relatively low rate because you don't pay the 50% environmental levy. So you find that you are going to pay at a lower. So it depends on the category of the car, the age of the vehicle someone has imported. So if you import the one that's 9 years old, you are going to pay, obviously, a higher rate. And you'll find at the end of the day that the taxes might be more than the value of the vehicle because of the different tax heads. But when you import the one that is a little bit newer, that's between 0 and 8, you will not pay the environmental levy. So therefore, the compounded rate of the value that goes into tax will be lower than the value of the vehicle.
I want to take you back a little bit to the valuation method. How do you value? Just take us through the valuation method on these particular vehicles. If you're to look at, for example, second-hand vehicles that are dating 10 years or 12, do you use the same valuation when these people are paying taxes?
Yes, that's what I mentioned earlier, that we have a used motor vehicle guide. Guide for all those vehicles that are allowable to the country. So the vehicles that have not made 15 years, their values are in the guide. So that is a guideline.
Which is less cheaper than the others?
It's more, in many cases, you find that these values are much lower than the actual prices of these vehicles when you import them. You find in many cases, these values, because they are researched by our team of experts, and they looked at averages, find that these values are slightly lower than the actual values of these prices when you import them. So that gives a guide so that if you find that it is that uniform, that you are paying almost at the same rate. Yes.
Okay, and of course there are quite a number of questions in here in regards to the issue of considering these vehicles and everything, or the vehicles that you need to buy. So Mr. Emmanuel, if you have to look at it, what do you then consider as the Uganda Revenue Authority for a bond owner? I do know you're not into the licensing of businesses as much, but of late everyone needs to have a team. when you look at after the URSB is done registering these businesses, what then do you, for example, consider while, to this bond or these bond owners as the taxman? What normally do you consider for them to be eligible business?
No, the bond owners, these are bonded warehouses.
Okay.
They are licensed. They have they operate under license to manage goods coming into their bond. Okay.
Okay.
They are responsible for the goods in their custody. So all these goods come into the bond, they manage the cargo in the bond. Of course, the customs officers are deployed to manage the clearance processes of the vehicles in the bond. So these bond owners, their work is to keep custody of these vehicles. And then the dealers or the owners will be responsible for payment of the duties. So the bond owners don't pay the duty on those vehicles. The vehicles are goods belonging to the importers, to the car dealers, to the private importers, that are the ones responsible for the duties as far as those vehicles are concerned.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I want to believe Uganda Revenue Authority's drive is also to serve Ugandans. You are serving Ugandans here. I want to believe that some of these tax policies, are laid out to ensure that a Ugandan is not affected.
True.
So what if you have to look at this issue to do with car importation and what you do during this document processing and everything, what are some of the things that Ugandans, or for example, we the consumers who buy these vehicles, what are you safeguarding us from?
What was the rationale of this policy that was brought into to not allow in importations of those vehicles 15 years old and above? This was for the environment, for environmental protection. Okay. So the rationale behind this was environment, safeguarding. These vehicles that are 20, 25 years old and so on, they are risky to the environment because of the emissions of the gases, that they will be emitting. Okay. So that is safeguarding the public or the environment from consuming those toxic gases because of their age. Because of their age, on the regime of custom regime of warehousing, where vehicles have entered into warehousing regime. How would they get out? One is the owner or the dealer pays tax on them and are registered into the country. That is one choice, and that is what is largely done. The second option is re-export. Somebody gets a buyer from a neighboring country, and the vehicle enters into a re-export regime. They are re-exported. So under this re-export, there's no duty charged on the vehicle. There are no taxes charged on the vehicle
because they've already cleared at the port.
They entered into the country. No duty paid. So now when they're exporting, exports have no duty under customs on motor vehicles. So they will pay duty to the other government where they are going, either to South Sudan or to Rwanda or to Burundi. So that is
it's just like they're passing through Kenya,
they're passing through Uganda, very good, and then
passing through Uganda to South Sudan.
So we just we facilitate trade to allow them to leave the bond and exit the country. So there is no duty levied on these vehicles on re-exports.
Okay.
Yes,
and as we are summing up with our discussion here, in your final remarks, I wish you to comment something about how the industry is growing, according to you as a person who is actually supervising this kind of unit, and following up on the issue to do with motor vehicles and their entry in the country, as well as their exit. When you look at this, how is the bond business thriving, or how are the dealers in the country thriving? It does look like a lucrative business, a risky one as well. But by the look of things, how is it and where is its future in the next few years?
Thank you. We have a growth in volume of motor vehicles imported. Okay, if you look at statistics of what we had before in 2018, before the policy of the ban, there's a very significant growth in the volumes, and at the same time also revenue on these motor vehicles. So the industry of course has many players. We have the dealers, we have these other brokers who are always looking for the buyers for those vehicles. So at least it has given an opportunity, employment opportunity to different categories of people in that business sector. So it is a growth in that sector.
Okay. And in the essence of paying taxes, how best can you remind the Ugandans to pay these taxes, especially the bond business owners?
Yes, obviously, of course, there's a lot of control. There's a control that you cannot go with the vehicle unless you have registered it. Okay, and registration is done when you have gone through the customs processes. Okay, the vehicle comes in at Mombasa or Dar es Salaam or at Entebbe, and they are entered into a declaration of home consumption, and duties are paid, and thereafter you go through registration. Okay. Registration. Yes, that is how the duty is being collected. And of course, I wouldn't say there are, of course, some cases where someone would maybe wish to make forgery on documents, which is an offense. That should not be really something somebody should risk to go on, because once caught, you will be you face the consequences. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So at least the system is streamlined, and importers go through the normal clearance processes before the vehicles get registered and go on the road. Okay.
Many thanks for joining us, Mr. Emmanuel Mponja, who is the supervisor of customs, and he's in charge document processing, the document processing center, motor vehicles at the Uganda Revenue Authority. Our topic of discussion was analyzing or having an analysis of the import and export business in Uganda of the cars or vehicles in the country. But besides that as well, trying to understand how best the businesses can get into the proper context of it, and obviously avoid such issues to do with the negative side of it, whereby most of them have their queries with the government. I'm Jerome Paul Sonko, and you've been watching The Point. Till next time, thank you very much.